Heading into this past season, I don't think anybody could have predicted what was going to end up happening with the 76ers. The expectations were way too high. Injuries can always happen. And even if they did or do have a couple players that tend to be injury prone, I don't think anybody expected it to go this poorly for them. It's just a very disappointing season overall. Whether you're a fan or not, kind of feel for everyone that is a fan, and then from a fantasy perspective, boy, was it frustrating. If you had Embiid and you got Embiid in a redraft league, your season was basically shot. I have Embiid in a dynasty league, and that's a difficult situation to navigate because obviously he couldn't help me win games, but also what's the trade value there? How do people feel about trading for a guy that we don't really know how many games he's going to play moving forward? He wasn't going to play back to backs entering this past season, and then he ended up barely playing at all. And obviously, Paul George is aging and coming off one of the worst seasons of his career. Despite it being one of the most disappointing seasons relative to expectations in recent history, given the fact that they, in theory, upgraded from Tobias Harris to Paul George, and the expectations were that they were going to be competing for a championship. And the name Cooper Flag was not going to be anywhere near a Philadelphia 76ers jersey or roster. And now it is. Given that relative to expectations, how disappointing it was, there was still a lot of fun moments, a lot of reasons for optimism. It started off with the Jared McCain run that lasted for a few weeks. And then we had Quentin Grimes end of the season. Of course, Tyrese Maxey was dominant for most of the season, um, especially kind of middle of the year, and then got shut down towards the end. And now they needed a top six pick to keep their first round pick. Right now, they're projected to be five. So it would take two teams from below them leaping up ahead of them for that pick to potentially go to the Thunder. Um, yeah, the draft lottery here in a couple weeks is going to mean a lot to the direction of the 76ers, whether or not we should be optimistic, what kind of moves they can make. But before we get into the specifics of that, BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for all your sports betting action. We are in the thick of things when it comes to the NBA playoffs. We already have had series wrap up. Tonight, we will have a chance for another one with the Cavs leading the Heat 3-0, chance to sweep. They're currently favored by 8.5. That's a pretty hefty number for going against a team at home with their backs against the wall. I think it speaks to the way the series has gone, so it's totally fair. But if you're, a believer in hashtag heat culture and don't think they're going to go out like this, 8.5 is a pretty favorable spread for that. And then the second game will be the Rockets and the Warriors, with the Warriors currently favored by 3.5 points. Jimmy Butler's status will impact that quite a bit. But I mean, that's going to be continue to be a very physical series, whether he's there or not. Should be interesting to see how that continues to play out. Even if Houston doesn't win this series, I'm very optimistic about them moving forward. They have a lot of pieces, which, I mean, they're not the first team to add a lot of talent in the lottery, have players start to pan out, things go well in the postseason, and then they have to make the right moves because of it. We've seen it a lot where teams don't, or I guess overachieve. Like if Houston were to make it to the conference finals this year, they could look at their roster and say, no, we're good, and then not be proactive about improving their team heading into next season. It could be, the wrong move. We've seen that with a number of teams in recent history. So maybe losing in the first round isn't the worst thing for them long term. Obviously, if you're in the short term, of course you want to win the championship. Duh. But long term, it could be good for them as a team for them to say, okay, like we need to get better. Even though we were really good in the regular season, we now have playoff experience with these guys. We got to continue to build out our roster. Yeah, so that's my apparent tangent in the middle of the ad read, which I don't know if those are a good thing or not. But as far as Bet Online, they have the largest selection of odds on everything from the MLB to the NHL to UFC. They are your number one online source for all your sports wagering info. And then in between all these games, you can head over to the Bet Online Casino. They have all the top Vegas style games, including poker and a live casino. Bet online, the game starts here. All right. We're going to talk about the Philadelphia 76ers now, which is, I think, exciting. I think it's, you know what? It is more exciting than it's been in the past, however many seasons. The last few seasons, it's been very much, they've been one of those teams where there's a few guys at the top. There may be one or two guys that have the upside down the roster, but it's mostly the values coming from the guys at the top. And there isn't too much else to dive into other than, hey, this guy's kind of exciting, but like, will he get the opportunity? And this year was definitely a year that these players got a lot of opportunity because of all the injuries. Just going down the list, Joel Embiid played 19 games. Tyrese Maxey played 52. Paul George played 41. Let's see. Jeremy Kane played 23. Andre Drummond played 40. Kelly Oubre played 60. If we're looking at the players that are on their roster at the end of the season that would have met the NBA's 65 game threshold for a postseason award, it would have been Gershon Yabusele, Quentin Grimes, who wasn't even with the 76ers for most of the season, or for the first half of the season. Now, I guess that would still count as most of the season based on when the trade happened. And then Ricky Council, the fourth. So not a lot of continuity with this roster. Doesn't make things easy for Nick Nurse. And then also on top of the lack of continuity, the lack of talent that they were expecting to have this season, just culminated in a very, very disappointing season. They finished with a 24-58 record. I don't have the exact preseason betting odds for their win total, but I assume it was in the upper 40s, or at least in the 40s. So they fell short of that by a good bit. When you miss that many, or have all your players miss that many games, it's not that surprising. But they have a lot of questions to answer. Where do you go from here? I think it's probably something that ownership or management, depending on how you want to look at it, needs to have an honest conversation with themselves or just kind of as a team. And it's probably something that's not going to happen because when you look at what actually needs to happen, a lot of it would end up being Daryl Morey kind of being honest and saying that he, like, the moves that he made didn't work in the team's favor, and I guess kind of convincing ownership that he needs another shot to kind of build this thing from the ground up and keep his job, which that's, I mean, is ownership going to say, oh, okay, like, thank you for admitting your mistakes. We still believe in you. We trust you. We don't actually think it was all your fault, the injuries, blah, blah, blah. Like, we're down to give you a rebuild. Or would ownership say, no, if you're not here to win games, you're not here at all. We're going to have someone else come in if we're going to go through a rebuild. Or are they going to say, why would we even try and go through a rebuild when, unless, of course, you luck out in the lottery this year, we're not going to get a player as good as Joel Embiid ever, you know? So, and again, that's, everything's relative. We can talk specifics, but if you're the 76ers and you get the opportunity to rebuild, somebody will give you assets for Joel Embiid, Paul George, more so Joel Embiid. But a lot of it does depend on their health because you're probably, there will be teams, but maybe not the ideal ones to help you launch a rebuild, that are willing to give up the draft picks that you'd probably want for a player or players of their caliber. And we're just going to pull up just their future picks. So I'm making sure that I'm not just totally being ridiculous on this. Okay. So if if their first round pick doesn't convey this year, which probably, I mean, unless they hop out, it won't, or it will. No, it won't. It won't convey because they'll keep it. Yes. Then it would be top 4 protected the next 2 seasons. Okay. And then if it still hasn't conveyed by then it becomes a second round pick, which will go to the Thunder. Guaranteeing top 4 every year is a pretty tough thing to do. And then in 2029, they'll be able to swap Um, Making sure I'm reading this correctly. Has the right to swap its 2029 first for the Clippers 2029 first round pick, protected for selections 1 through 3. So, to mine, I think I'm reading this right. If it's outside the top 3 for the Clippers in 2029, the 76ers will have the right to swap. If it's top 3, then doesn't matter. Won't be able to swap. So, guaranteeing, like I said, guaranteeing top 4 every year, that's pretty difficult. So, you have to really pull the plug on that thing in order to have a chance to kind of make that realistic. And if you were looking to launch a rebuild, I don't think you'd be looking to move Tyrese Maxey, which means that's probably not going to happen. So if you were to try a rebuild, you'd want to. It doesn't. The timing of it doesn't necessarily make a ton of sense. Um, though, if you do kind of land, say it's Cooper Flag, I mean, like they'll have a 10.5% chance at that happening. That impacts your decision making there because you can probably, I don't know, so you probably at that point you just say, yeah, we'll take our starting lineup of Tyrese Maxey, Jared McCain or Quentin Grimes, Paul George, Cooper Flag, and Joel Embiid, and we'll take that in the playoffs. And even if it takes time for that thing to work, Cooper Flag's getting great playoff experience early on. Tyrese Maxey's a future stud. We'll try and win with Paul George and Joel Embiid. We'll let our pick convey to the Thunder next year, and then maybe reevaluate and say, okay, maybe we do need to rebuild for a year, try and get a top pick in 2027. I'm just really getting off of my rebuild tangent here. So maybe we don't need to discuss all the specifics of that, but I think it is kind of a crossroads for this team this summer because it's a good opportunity to rebuild slash reload. And there's a lot of questions that you need to answer about Joel Embiid's health, about Paul George's health. I'm assuming Jared McCain's long-term health will be fine, but it's not a great thing to see a rookie have a season-ending injury, especially when he started as well as he did with the meniscus tear that kind of ended it in early mid-December. We'll call it mid-December. I think that's mid-December. But he had a fantastic. We'll talk about him first. Let's get this pulled up here. Talk about Jared McCain first, who as a rookie averaged 15.3 points, 2.4 rebounds, 2.6 assists, 2.2 threes, shot 46% from the floor. He had that run as a starter in November and then one more start in early December. That kind of made you say, okay, this guy is going to be very good. I think he would have won Rookie of the Year had he stayed healthy the whole time. Just in his 8 starts, which incredibly small sample size, if we're really looking at that and being honest. 8 starts, 23.8 points, 3.4 rebounds, 4.3 assists, and 3.6 threes. In those starts, he shot 39.2% from beyond the arc. Most of the time with the rookie guards, you're seeing, especially ones that played on the ball as much as he did, you're seeing more field goal percentage issues than what we saw from Jared McCain. Then obviously the flashiness with the ball in his hand, the relocation shooting, a lot of probably not necessarily fair comparisons, but a couple of young Steph Curry comparisons, which gets you excited about his long-term projection. And I think, if he's able to start year 2 as well as he did year 1, I mean, I would assume that with time to recover from the injury and then continue to rehab that and then just improve from year 1 to year 2, I think even if you have a major injury, just being around the team, getting stronger in other ways that you can't while you're injured and then strengthening your body. Like I'm assuming he's not able to do much lower body stuff, but being ready, like having a more NBA ready body heading into year 2. I'm very excited to see what he can do. I'm still not, I wouldn't say he's the top player from this past class from a dynasty perspective because I mean Alex Sarr's probably still my number one. We didn't really get to see much Reed Shepard. There was still some other players that played very well during their rookie year. Obviously, Stephon Castle's probably going to win. I think that'll be this week that that's announced. So again, shout out to Bet Online if you want to get in on that and bet on Rookie of the Year. I guess you can do that. Nice little secondary plug. But yeah, I'm excited to see what Jared McCain can do in year two. Still just incredibly young. Not really seeing, I guess that's the difference between him and guys like Sar or Reed Shepard that have a little bit more of a category league fantasy friendly game. Like we've seen Jared McCain in a small sample size have good shooting splits for a guard that's shooting a lot of threes. Like the 46% isn't great, but when you're looking at how many deep range shots he's shooting, I think it helps make that feel a little bit better because I think we see a lot of younger, smaller, not that he's tiny, but younger, smaller guards struggle with field goal percentage. And it's just kind of like, oh, it's okay because they do other things. Um, the points in the threes are going to be his main category, but we saw what he could do as kind of the lead guard, but a lot of that was when Tyrese Maxey was out. So, what does Jared McCain's role look like with this entire team healthy? He's not necessarily the defender that you want if you're really trying to, I guess, want him starting next to Maxi. I think if you're looking at who should start, you could say Maxi Quentin Grimes is going to be a better defender. And I mean, they're both him and like both Grimes and McCain, very good shooters. Both had awesome stretches this year. I would say Grimes is a better defender. So maybe he fits in a little bit better in the starting lineup. So maybe Jared McCain's a sixth man next year and still has some really good games, but maybe the production doesn't come as consistently. I think long term, we can still see him playing a significant role and seeing him eventually become a starter. But, situations change in the NBA so quickly. So even if it seems like, oh, well, he's going to be stuck behind Tyrese Maxey for his entire career, things change. Either, Maxey leaves or Jared McCain gets traded in a package to bring in a superstar to try and help the team win a championship. Who knows what happens? Even if, I'm sure 76ers fans are going to want to keep Maxey and McCain for the entirety of their careers, things change. So still like the way that McCain projects out as a scorer, as a shooter, and potentially even as a playmaker. We'll have to see how he continues to develop on the defensive end. 15 steals in 23 games isn't great. He had a handful of games, like especially early on, 4 minutes, 4 minutes, 3 minutes in October and November. So the steals still weren't great when he was starting, but does it improve in year two? I don't know. I'm not really seeing Jared McCain as a 1.5 steal per game guy. So a lot of the production is going to be dependent on what his role looks like as far as the assists, and then a lot of points and threes. That's what we're going to be getting from him. Not necessarily a bad thing for, I guess, him as a player or for the 76ers as a team. But if we're talking about his fantasy upside, he's going to either have to just simply be on the floor long enough to add in a couple of other, like either rebounds or like a little bit more, a couple more steals. Not necessarily he has to like improve his steals, but just being out on the floor a little longer would help, I would assume. And then just continued improvement as a shooter and as an efficient scorer if he can just improve the field goal percentage a little bit. Again, it's a small sample size, so it could just be that this was a hot streak and is actually not going to be able to replicate that. It could be that, oh, he's definitely going to surpass that in year two. We don't even need to worry about it too much. So definitely a big point of excitement heading into year two and just heading into next season for the 76ers is just seeing how Jared McCain progresses. But I think on the flip side of that, we're looking at the other option to start here at Quentin Grimes, who averaged over the course of last season 14.6 points, 4.3 rebounds, three assists, 1 steal, 2.2 threes. Let me pull up his numbers just with the 76ers because those were a little bit better. He averaged 21.9 points, 5.2 rebounds, 4.5 assists, 1.5 steals, 2.9 threes. Took 16 shots per game. played 34 minutes per game. I really don't foresee those things continuing. Quentin Grimes had an awesome stretch after he got traded to Philly, and it was at the time fairly questionable trade, where it was kind of like, "Hey, Nico Harrison, what are you doing?" Wasn't the first time that happened. Insert new Nico Harrison joke. Insert old Nico Harrison joke. There's a lot of them being made already, so I won't try and get new ones off. Um, but yeah, just a big win for the 76ers to get Quentin Grimes. Restricted free agent, believe. Um, Matter of fact, just for the sake of making sure everything is correct before I end the show, not that I'm about to, I'm just going to double check and make sure that is actually what I was trying, or the correct thing. Yes, a restricted free agent. Okay, double checked it. We're good. He's going to have plenty of suitors that are going to be looking to try and sign him. It would be pretty silly for Philly to not match, kind of regardless of what the offer is. Now, okay, maybe not necessarily regardless of what the offer is, but as long as it's somewhat reasonable and they can afford it, keeping him back. Because they do have a couple other guys that are on just massively insane contracts. So we'll see if that ends up becoming a sticky situation. But I think he played so well that you have to keep him if you can, unless it like something plays in where you just physically like you cannot sign him because you just don't have the cap space. That kind of thing. Okay, fine. But they should try and keep him. And I would assume that he is the starting shooting guard next to Tyrese Maxey in the backcourt. But he's not gonna replicate what he did. Probably nowhere close. George Niang, when he was trash talking him in one of their late season games, let's see when they played the Hawks. Believe it was in March. Well, they played him twice in March. I don't remember which game specifically. George Niang said it, but he, just classic trash talk, said something along the lines of like, you're a role player. When Maxey's back, you're sitting in the corner. When Embiid's back, you're sitting in the corner. And he's not wrong. I guess George Niang's not a liar. So I think if there is anyone in your league that would be willing to pay the price for Quentin Grimes, assuming that he's going to be able to I don't think anybody's going to assume that he's going to continue to average 21 points per game with the 76ers. But if anyone's optimistic that he actually has long-term star upside or like borderline star upside, just because of his late season run, I'd be looking to move off of him. I think he's a really good player, but if you're trying to win games and like the 76ers are trying to win a championship, who do you want shooting the shots? Joel Embiid or Quentin Grimes? Do you want Tyrese Maxey or Quentin Grimes? Paul George or Quentin Grimes? And okay, maybe the last one's a little bit more questionable, maybe. But I think at best, Quentin Grimes is a third option in the offense, and that's if he continues to shoot the ball as well as he did down the stretch. So it's hard to be super optimistic. I think that he did more than enough to earn himself a large payday. Like, shout out to him. I think he's going to be an important player for the 76ers and is going to help them win games. But I think if we're just looking strictly at fantasy, I don't really see him having enough of a role to come anywhere close to what he did down the stretch. Could he? I mean, just looking at his season-long numbers, are those more realistic? 14.6 points, 4.3 rebounds, 3 assists, a steal, 2.2 threes. I think those are actually fairly realistic. It's a nice combination of what he did with Dallas and what he did with the 76ers. Two very different roles, and I think what his role ends up being next year is somewhere right in the middle. And that on Basketball Monster was 143rd. So we're talking about a guy that, yeah, you probably in a redraft league, you draft him in the late rounds. And then if there is injuries, because that's another thing that we have to consider is that Joel Embiid may not be healthy to start next season. Probably won't be healthy to start next season. Who knows when he's going to be healthy and how many games he's going to play when he's healthy. Paul George, I would assume is healthy to start next season, But are they going to come out and say, yeah, no, he's not playing back to backs either? There's no chance Embiid does. Why would we, and that there's just enough games there where you're like, okay, Quentin Grimes is going to have enough of an opportunity between injuries to other players that he does have some value there, as opposed to what we would expect out of him when the full team is healthy. It's pretty interesting that for the most part, a lot of the rest of the league isn't having the same back to back rest issue that we did necessarily a few years ago, where, we were baking it into projections for the season that 10 or 15 stars slash starters are like not going to play one leg of back to backs. And I think for the most part, they were a little bit better about that this season. Obviously, when Kawhi came back, they were careful with him, but that one just makes total sense. And I think he ended up even playing a back to back. Anthony Davis, until he had the lengthy injury, was playing back to backs. LeBron James played back to backs all season. Steph Curry played back to backs all season, from what I remember. So, like, it's not the issue that's plaguing the league anymore that it once was, but it seems to still be an issue with the 76ers. And I don't really see that changing, which is kind of annoying, kind of stinks, because I don't think, maybe they shouldn't even. Like, probably don't with Joel Embiid. I think Paul George is, you know, having seen other players that were he was kind of in the same boat with, all play back to backs, would like to see him, but I'm not a medical staff. We'll see what ends up happening. I'm not too worried about it. I would go under the assumption that neither of them are going to play back to backs, but that is a good thing for Quentin Grimes. So that's cool. Hopefully, I think long term he has the upside there, but like, what does his role look like? Um, I'm just not super optimistic that, in say like 2 years, maybe Paul George is off the roster. Who knows what's up with Joel Embiid? How healthy is he? So even if Quentin Grimes is starting, I don't really see him ever being a top two scoring option on a playoff team. He was a top scoring option on a rebuilding team to end this season, and that's okay. He's a good starter on a postseason team. It's just not as great for fantasy. Not the end of the world there. Um, let's see. Who are the other guys that we can talk about outside of just harping on the injury ups, like potential of Joel Embiid and Paul George, which I don't even know. I mean, what do we say? Like, we'll see what the updates are, but I'm not super optimistic about either of them playing significant amounts. And if I were running the team and I was not choosing to rebuild, I don't know that I would play them a lot. I think that I would almost say, yeah, Joel Embiid, there's no way you're playing before December. And then we'll play you every once in a while. I mean, of course, the league wouldn't allow this, but like, play you once a week, keep you healthy, keep you playing games, and we're going to make sure you're healthy. And then if, it seems like we're not going to make the postseason, then we'll start playing you twice a week. But I think that's what you have to do if you really want to be serious about trying to win a championship with him. The grind of the NBA season is so much, and with the way his body has been the last few years, it's like, it's actual questions about, like, can his body hold up enough through the regular season for him to even have a chance at playing in the playoffs. So that's my Joel Embiid piece. Cool. I think probably the number one dynasty asset. I don't even want to say probably the number one dynasty asset in Philadelphia right now. Any sport. I actually don't know how he would rank in dynasty baseball, but that's a little the Tyrese Maxey Saquon debate is actually one that we're gonna have on this show. No, not really. Maxey is coming off averaging 26.3 points, 3.3 rebounds, 6.1 assists, 1.8 steals, 3.1 threes, and playing 37.7 minutes per game. That is a hefty workload, but with Embiid out and Paul George out and Jared McCain out, pretty much when Maxey was healthy, he was having to play a ton of minutes, and he had the short absence in November, and then his season was basically done by early March. Um, the points were a career high, just ever so slightly. The steals were a massive leap from 1 to 1.8 this past season, which I think really helped offset any other changes to his stats because just comparing the two, because he did play 37.5 minutes per game the year before. So, I mean, Maxi was going to play a heavy workload regardless, but you'd like to see maybe. I mean, I think the ideal team building strategy is to have your starters playing 32 ish minutes per game, and that helps keep them somewhat fresh for the postseason, but is enough that, I mean, they're playing a lot during the regular season. Anyways, that's team building talk, but the threes improved by point 0.1 per game, rebounds went down by point 0.4, assists went down by point 0.1, blocks went down by point 0.1, field goal percentage dropped by 1.3, turnovers went up by point 0.7. So, like, not too much of a difference for most of that, but a lot of it was negative. And I think the steals leaping from 1 to 1.8 were huge for his 9 cap value to leap from 19 the year before per basketball monster to 10 this past season in per game. How fluky was that? I mean, steals are a fluky stat. So I don't think anyone should expect them to stay that high. If they do, great. If not, I would almost be baking into your projection that to go down to like 1.2, 1.3. If you're trying to think about what he's going to look like next year or in the coming years, I think 1.8 is just so far above what he's done every other season of his career. Maybe that's just who he is. I wouldn't just fully bank on that, though. I think Maxi will be healthy to start next season. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Um, and I think early on, he's going to be the guy. I mean, I think if you're trying to look at the 76ers long term, you have to consider Maxi almost the franchise player at this point because he's the most reliable option to be considered that. Now, you may say when healthy, Joel Embiid is the best player, but I'd say Maxi is kind of most representative of who the Philadelphia 76ers should be. And a younger star to build around. I mean, he'll turn 25 in November. So after the season starts, yeah, I mean, he's going to be very good for another, I mean, bare minimum 7, 8 years. And I'm sure 76ers fans would love for him to just play out his entire career there because he's awesome. He's an easy player to root for. He's a fun player to root for. Yeah, he's got the makings of, not the makings. He is a fantasy superstar. Like, I don't think there's anything wrong with considering him that. Let me see if I have do have my dynasty rankings pulled up here, and this was from a couple months ago, but I had him 16th there, and I don't think much changes because he didn't really play much since I made those. So I'd say bare minimum top 25, top 20 asset in dynasty leagues, and the most reliable 76er moving forward. All right. The other guys that we can talk about, I feel like we just have to mention. We definitely can't talk about everybody that played for the Sixers this year because that was 30 names, 30 different players. If I'm just going based off of who has stats showing up on NBA.com, 30 players registered stats or played minutes for Philly this season. We cannot talk about all of them. Kelly Oubre is going to continue to be a solid rotation piece. Lonnie Walker signed late in the year. Think he deserves to be in the NBA. Don't really think, I guess, how does he project out a rotation piece, a depth piece? Jared Butler, is fun to see him get more minutes earlier on because the last 2 years he's played really well for Washington, kind of late season to kind of improve their lottery odds right there at the end. And seeing him in a larger role early on was fun. I think he can be like a solid backup point guard. And if he ever gets the chance to slide to the starting lineup, that he gets you those really nice assists as a streaming option. But that's probably that. That's it. really. Here we can talk a little bit more about Gershon Yabusele, who, after having the awesome Olympics for France, earned a contract with Philly, averaged 11 points, 5.6 rebounds, 2.1 assists, 1.5 threes, played in 70 games, which, I mean, he was basically the only player healthy all year for them. He was a consistent presence in the lineup. I streamed him in at least one or two redraft leagues, and I had him for most of the season just because he was reliable. And they, even though he's 6'8", they had no problem starting him at center at times. Helped him have some good rebound numbers. He was just a pretty well-rounded producer. I mean, there's no like star upside here, but a solid piece for them to keep around. Um, that's I don't know. I think that they have, if everyone's healthy on this team, have legitimate depth. I mean, if we're just talking about the lineup we talked about, it's like Maxi Grimes, Paul George. That's of course okay. Say they win the lottery and they get Cooper Flag. If they don't, I'd assume that it's either Kelly Oubre and Paul George starting, or Paul George and Gershon Yabusele, and then Embiid, and then Oubre off the bench, or Jerry McCain off the bench. Another player who I'll pull up his so you guys can see his face, if you're watching, that played pretty well was undrafted rookie Justin Edwards. Um, Averaged 10.1 points, 3.4 rebounds, 1.6 assists, one steal, 1.6 threes. Um, he was a 5-star prospect. I don't remember exactly where he ranked for his high school class, but it was really high. Um, and then went undrafted after a pretty iffy season at Kentucky, but was like a really solid wing when he got the chance with Philly. So we'll see how he plays in the rotation next year. I think he's definitely did enough to be worth stashing in dynasty leagues, because he definitely has the upside there. But I wouldn't be totally banking on him turning into what he was expected to be, I guess, coming out of high school. But he's young enough to be worth stashing. And I think having some decent steal numbers, decent scoring numbers, decent threes, there's some upside there. There's enough upside there with him having been a 5-star that went to Kentucky, and having a solid rookie year and still being only 21. Like, there's enough there for me to consider him as an upside swing. Um, I think the only other guy, I mean, I guess Ricky Council IV is another guy worth mentioning. Average 7.3 points, 2.9 rebounds, 1.3 assists. Really athletic player. Have seen him have some good games over the past few seasons, and he definitely has some upside. Um, we'll see if he gets the chance. I mean, he hasn't turned 24 yet, so he is also a guy that is worth stashing. We'll see if he gets the chance to really expand on that, but I think he's worth keeping around. And the other guy is former first round pick Jalen Hood-Schifino, who kind of latched on with Philly, after getting traded by the Lakers to the Jazz and then waived. End of the year last month with Philly. Had a couple solid games. I liked him coming out of college just because I think I liked the way he operated in pick and rolls and stuff, but very, very bad when he first got into the league and was not able to figure things out. I don't think that if you're able to come in as a rookie and have success with the Lakers, like that's very impressive. But I don't think everybody's meant to come in and have that type of pressure on them. And he probably needed more of a slow development process. And he was able to get that late in the year. I'm not optimistic that he's going to turn into, a fantasy stud, but he had some solid games. He had a 19-point game, a 12-point game, an 18-point game. He had 6 assists, two 5-assist games, a 4 assist. In that time, he scored 19 points. He had 5 threes in that game. So, like, I think he can stick around the NBA. I'm not super optimistic that he's worth stashing in a dynasty league, but I think he did some cool stuff down the stretch to kind of, I guess, redeem his path a little bit, because it seemed like, oh my goodness, he was going to flame out of the league really quickly. But I don't think that's necessarily the case. So that's pretty cool. Good for him. That's going to do it for the 76ers episode. We'll see how things play out. It was a messy season. I think a lot of things can be turned around here in mid-May if the lottery goes their way. If they fall outside the top 6 picks because some teams leap up, oof, things are not going to be looking too pretty for the 76ers moving forward. I think at this point, obviously everybody wants Cooper Flag. If they can just stay inside the top 6, add somebody, that way you have like a young core of Tyrese Maxey, Jared McCain, Quentin Grimes, and another rookie. I think you have enough of a young core to say, okay, we're good enough to go to the playoffs with our team healthy, and we have a young core that can develop from being into the postseason. There is a path for us. Optimism. But next season, yeah, you're kind of needing some more of a direction. If you don't, especially if you don't get that pick, it's not looking too great. But we will have our fingers crossed for 76ers fans. I think it's May 12th or 13th, one of those 2 days. Maybe both days. We'll just keep our fingers crossed just in case. But that's going to do it for this episode. Make sure if you enjoyed it, I don't want to just beg for a like. I want to earn it. A like, a subscription, regardless of whether you're listening to this on podcast or if you're watching this on YouTube. Anything to interact with our content helps out a lot. If you want to share it with your friends, if you disagree, let me know. It's totally cool. I'm down to have healthy conversations. But yeah, it's gonna do it for this episode, and I will see you guys next time.